It's been interesting to me over the last few weeks, especially since the Super Bowl, to listen to and read about some of the criticism aimed at the "he gets us" ads. It seems like the criticism falls into two main camps. One is it's kind of evangelism light. It makes Jesus warm and fuzzy, but it doesn't really convey the idea of a need for repentance or confession or sin. And the other one is the idea of the amount of money that has been spent on the program. And as I've been thinking about that, I was thinking about the passage in Matthew 7 where Jesus said this, and I read it in the Message. Don't pick on people, jump on their failures, criticize their faults, unless, of course, you want the same treatment. That critical spirit has a way of boomeranging. It's easy to see a smudge on your neighbor's face and be oblivious to the ugly sneer on your own. Do you have the nerve to say, "Let me wash your face for you," when your own face is distorted by contempt? It's this whole traveling road show mentality all over again, playing a holier-than-thou part instead of just living your part. Wipe that ugly sneer off your own face, and you might be fit to offer a washcloth to your neighbor. Now, I think sometimes that we forget that God has called us to look to ourselves first before we criticize or judge others. And I think it was Dwight Moody who said when a lady once criticized him and his method of evangelism, "Well, I like the way I do evangelism better than the way you don't do evangelism." So I think before we get critical of a campaign that's meant to convey something about Jesus, we should think about what are we trying to convey with him in our own lives. And then secondly, I think when we think about the idea of money, God calls us to be faithful to what he has given to us. And again, we need to look at our own lives. I suppose somebody could look at me and say, well, if you didn't spend so much money going out to eat, you would have more money for missions. Or if you didn't spend money on cable television to watch the Dodgers, you would have more money for missions. Or if you drove a different kind of car or lived in a different kind of house, you would have more money for kingdom purposes. If you didn't go to Starbucks, you would have more money for kingdom purposes. Sometimes it's easy for us to kind of point the finger at the big guys and forget that God calls us to faithfulness in what we have and what he has given us and our own resources. And I'm not really meaning to either criticize or defend those particular ads. I think it's more the attitude that concerns me. The attitude that as believers, we come across as being willing to just tear each other to shreds. That we come across ungraciously, that we come across as though we have a sneer on our own face. So I would encourage us today to think about our attitude, to think about whether or not we have a spirit of criticism living in us. Not just about a Super Bowl ad, but maybe about how the church down the street does ministry, or maybe how the other small group leader leads their small group, or maybe how children's ministry does children's ministry. I think we need to consider what is our heart attitude. And then we need to consider, how am I using my resources for the kingdom? I think if we all look to ourselves first, we might be better equipped to work together to use our resources for God's kingdom in the most effective way.